Hello, I'm going to speak today about the imposition of tariffs on the importation of steel and aluminium into the United States and why I think that this is a particularly bad idea. My own experience in this is the following. I was the publisher of an economic monthly, and I also used to write for a financial daily in Poland, and in 2001 I think it was, the then Polish government decided it wasn't going to allow steel to be imported, and the reason for this was because of the problems within the Polish steel industry itself, and which admittedly had serious problems. But the problem was that the local industry was producing steel which people didn't want, for example, for railway lines, whereas steel which was needed for exported products, that state had to import steel which was then turned into products such as cars, such as white goods, such as packaging. That was all required, and the problem was that people were laid off within both the manufacture of fridges, I think it was, and in the car industry until this situation was rectified. So it actually cost workers in other industries temporarily their jobs, not on a long-term basis. And I believe that this could well be the same situation could happen in the United States. A rough guess, I would say something like there are 80 times more people working in industries which use steel to produce their own products than actually work within the steel industry. Now, in many cases, these costs will of course just be passed on to the American consumer. That mightn't be a problem for the super wealthy rich like Mr. Trump, but it may be a problem for people watching this video who want to buy a new car. Indeed, the knock-on effect will be such that it will also raise the prices of used cars which are not using steel, which is subject to tariffs. In some industries, however, people can go over from currently using metals to doing something else. The best example of this is packaging. If you're currently drinking beer out of an aluminium can, it could be that the price of that aluminium may go up so much that the producers decide, well, it's not worth a bother, we'll revert to plastic or to glass. Something like this happened in Germany in around 2006, I think it was, when it was decided that packaging had to be returnable, so that more was produced in these other materials rather than in metal. One unfortunate thing that's happened as a result of these tariffs is that the stock market has actually plummeted, particularly in those companies which use metals. And unfortunately, there have been allegations of corruption. There's one gentleman, Carl Icahn, who I think is one of the richest people in the United States. His name does appear on the Forbes list. I think he's worth something like $16 billion or something along those lines. Somebody who incidentally does know about the steel industry, because in 1986 he tried to make a hostile takeover of US Steel, which didn't actually work out, but I'm sure he's kept his hand in there. He sold his stocks in steel-related companies a couple of days before this actually happened, thus saving himself somewhere in the region of $6 million. Now, for $6 million for us, of course, is a huge amount of cash. I mean, you and I would both retire with that type of money, we'd do no more work, and we'd just go and lie on the beach somewhere. But given the amount of money that Carl's got, this is be a tiny amount, and I think he should have taken the loss. Was it insider trading? Well, I'm sure there will be an investigation, and what I suspect actually happened was that Donald Trump rang him up and said, "Hey Carl, what do you think of this?" And Carl naturally reacted accordingly and sold the stock that he had, which would be affected by that. Is that insider trading or not? I don't know. maybe Carl can't be actually prosecuted for that. Maybe even Donald can't be either, because he didn't have the intention of giving inside information. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out as ideas. Now, one thing I do need to say is that there has to be a level playing field. It is totally unfair that those countries which do not treat their workers with any respect, who send in the army, arrest people when workers complain at the conditions they have to work in, who ask for more pay, and trade union leaders find themselves in prison. And therefore, I do agree with the principle of putting in tariffs or any other protectionist means, because it just stands to reason. It is not also within the interests of workers in countries such as China and others that they are treated in this way. So on that point, I do actually agree with the idea of tariffs. Finally, I'd like to speak on the knock-on effect. There will be tariffs against American products, and these could be American finished products. If, for example, Harley-Davidson finds itself with extra tariffs because it wants to import into the European Union, and I know that that was discussed yesterday, is being hit. This company's being hit by two things. One, it's got to pay more for the steel to make its motorbikes, and two, it's going to find its motorbikes more difficult to actually sell into the European Union and possibly also other countries. This is what happens with trade wars. Now, I think this could have been handled much better. Now, if the sanctions, if you like, or the tariffs had been asserted only to those countries which there is genuinely cause for concern, I might have agreed with it. But the way these things have been done, and this is just symptomatic of the entire Trump administration, without thinking things through properly, it's going to be bad for everybody. I think a number of people could end up suffering, particularly if this starts to escalate, particularly in Canada. But the people who are going to suffer most of all because of this are the Americans, who will need to buy products from steel and from aluminium. And even this could lead not to more American steel being sold, but less. And that will affect the steel workers, the unions and management of which currently supports this policy.